to the cloud. There's Christian. Okay, just on cue, Christian, just on cue.
I'm here.
Katie, Jennifer, Nelson, Kim. So how Meina Zhu and I are going to go through in a rapid order 8 studies in the next hour on MOOCs, because you've been reading pretty much 8 studies every week, and we haven't talked about any of them. So, you know, and then Kim goes and shows us a dog, and we can't ever get started when we have to see a dog, you know, little puppy. Yeah, okay. So Meina and I are going to try to do a couple short overviews of statistics from the last 3 years in terms of MOOCs, and then get into the different studies. So I'll start us off with the statistics, and Meina is going to walk us through most of studies 1, 2, 3, and even 4. And I'm going to come back. I'm going to introduce all the studies, and I'll be talking about all of them. But she's going to be in charge of those, and I'm going to be in charge of 5, 6, 7, and 8, sort of. Not really, but sort of. Oh, actually, she's got number 7. So we want to make sure we get to number 7. It's about students in MOOCs and their self-determination and self-directed learning, because that study is in press for next month, for March, which will be tomorrow. It could come out tomorrow, so we might as well present on it, and you can learn the new stuff. So yeah. So hi, Shishi. I'm glad to have you with us. You know Meina. Christian knows Meina. Jennifer knows Meina. So yeah. So they're all here to see you, Meina. And let me go to share my screen, and see if I can find the right one. I have 2 choices. Let's try this one. And it is the right choice, lo and behold. Okay, self-directed learn, self-directed live, 8 MOOC studies in an increasingly self-directed learning world by Meina and myself. And so we'll be talking about the systematic reviews of the research that Meina did. So we had to know what was happening. And then she did a follow-up in terms of the systematic review of the research, or meta-analyses some people try to do, where they summarize what exists out there. And then Meina did a study before her dissertation looking at instructional design considerations and challenges for MOOC instructors, and first doing a pilot study and then doing a larger sample in terms of surveys, and including doing interviews of instructors, and then also doing content analysis. Meina and I have been able to do this because we collected over 3,000 MOOC instructor names. So we did a series of studies on those MOOC instructors, which those instructors got us in contact with students. So we have one study of students that we want to get to as well. And as we pushed into this research, we studied self-directed learning in study number 4, personalization study number 5, cultural sensitivity in study number 6, which came out last year, MOOCs and self-directed learners, which is going to come out next month, and structural equation modeling, a high quantitative study I'm only going to show briefly, which came out a year ago and has already had tons of citations. It's probably, wouldn't you say, Meina, our most cited study is that last one. And we're probably not going to talk about that all that much, but just you might want to go back to ETR&D and take a look at that. It relates to Jen's dissertation using structural equation modeling and so forth, where she presented 2 or 3 weeks ago. It was 2.5 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. I think it's 3.5 weeks ago already, right? So how many of you have taken a MOOC? How many of you have failed a MOOC, passed out, suffered, died? Okay. So there's a lot of stories about MOOCs, some success stories like Kim was talking about taking a Laurie Santos's MOOC. And these guys are all happy with the MOOC data because, you know, as we see, MOOCs are so popular. My friend has a commencement ceremony around his MOOCs. He does the MOOC on Python programming, the MOOC on the internet. He has a MOOC teaching people about the history of the internet. He has a MOOC on programming for high school teachers called Programming for Everyone. His name is Dr. Chuck Severance at the University of Michigan, and he meets his students in hotels and in cafes all around the world. So he's MOOCified the University of Michigan, and he's a very interesting guy. He has a chapter in my 2015 MOOC book about how to learn by talking to your students, just meeting your students. So he doesn't ignore his students, unlike most MOOC instructors. My other point is my friend Jim and a guy who took more than 100 MOOCs. And we thought he was an outlier. Now we're finding other people who have taken more than 100 MOOCs. Shishi and I are interviewing kids in Nepal, and these kids have taken dozens, if not hundreds of MOOCs. And it's pretty amazing what people are doing today. So there's there's a lot of people taking MOOCs. There's so many people taking MOOCs. There are certificates to get discounts on MOOCs. So they're getting discounts on education. But if we look at the reports that come out annually from EDX or Coursera or other vendors, the numbers are staggering, in the millions in terms of the people that EDX from MIT have impacted. 2 years ago, by then they had impacted 80 million people. They had 5,700 instructors. So just an enormous number of people around the world are taking MOOCs, even though we hear the negativity out there. And we hear this thing about what's slowing down. 2019, the report came out, it's slowing down. Well, Kim, what do you think happened about 2 months into 2020? Or maybe 3 months in, Kim? So this report came out in December 2019. What do you think happened in March 2020?
They increased.
They dramatically increased. And, we had already, just in Coursera, 45 million people learning, 16 degree programs, 420 micro-credentials. But there's also Udacity and FutureLearn in the UK, and Swayam, I think, is in India. Then there's one in China, it's not even listed in here. So, there's the data is unrefutable, in terms of the number. Here we got 110 million students in 2019 before the pandemic, 13,000 courses, right before the pandemic, 110 million. And they were taking different things, depending on what country they were from. In India, they were taking communication courses and finance. In France, they're taking financial trading courses. In Germany, communication skills as well. US, Adobe, photography, graphic design. Canada, stock trading. Mexico, speed reading. So Spain, piano, because they were serenading their lovers on the balcony as COVID went around. So people were taking things like health and well-being from Laurie Santos, or coding for kids, or Microsoft Teams, all this kind of stuff. People were taking in droves during the pandemic. Coursera added 10 million new users in a 2-month span, because during the pandemic. And people started taking these things instead of going to graduate school. They were trying to get a credential via MOOCs, get a micro-credential or nano degree or specialization in data analytics, and save themselves all sorts of money and time by focusing narrowly on what micro-credential could be offered, including taking courses in Google IT and other things. So there's a rise of these credentials. And one of my students, Ziyang Zhao, has been studying this for her dissertation, and she's come to my other class twice already this semester. So you can just see this, and there are Cyber Mondays, so there's coupons again, just craziness. But look at a year later, 180 million students. So it's like, 70 million additional students, 5,000 additional classes, and all sorts of micro-credentials. And on different topics. Pre-pandemic, it was computer science, business. It was business courses. That's what they wanted. Post-pandemic, personal development and business. Still want business. Art and design, though. So you're stuck in your business between art and personal development, self-improvement, humanities. So people start thinking about their life and what their meaning and purpose is within their life. And so you can see the data and the growth. And, there's people will say there's a death of MOOCs. You look at this chart. There's no death of MOOCs. Look at the previous charts. There's no death of MOOCs happening. And in terms of, Udemy. So Udemy will let you offer a course online. Anybody, your grandmother could offer a course in Udemy and charge whatever they want. And they went public on the stock market, I believe. I know Coursera did. I'm pretty sure Udemy did as well. So, the growth is just in terms of the, and they're in San Francisco, like many of these. They didn't come out of Stanford, I don't think. So again, the growth of MOOCs through this year, it just keeps growing, 2021. So Meina and I put up the 2019, 20, and 21 data for you just to get a sense of, here we're now up to 220 million and 19,000 courses. And there's money to be made, as this chart shows. It's going up. So you look at Coursera from 2019, 2020, 2021. EDX just continues to grow. So you already asked that question. Sorry for the repeat question. But you can see that popular things are, master's degree in accounting or IT or marketing, data science, all the computer or business kinds of courses out there. But there's also nursing, you see, that's cybersecurity, entrepreneurship, well, that'd be business related too. But now it's kind of weird, pricing these things compared to, the traditional MBA costs $70,000, $80,000. Here it's $21,000. There's even people making their wedding announcements saying what MOOCs they've taken in their wedding announcements. I mean, it's just getting kind of crazy out there. One of my former students, Timothy Hugh, decided he would study all the discussion around the MOOC and look for keywords. So he did a machine learning data analysis of people's discussion about the MOOCs. And from that, he was able to glean what people liked within the MOOC, what they found useful from looking at the 10 most highly rated MOOCs. So in those 10 most highly rated MOOCs, they wanted, of course, clear explanations. They wanted to be task-centered or problem-centered, not teacher-centered. They wanted timely feedback, of course, because many of them don't get. They wanted humor, passion, pure interaction. These are kind of a no-brainers, but someone had to do the study. So they call that scraping the data. They scraped all these discussions in what's called course talk. Course talk is a way to rate the MOOCs out there. My friend George Veletsianos said that we need to have more diverse understandings of this MOOC phenomenon by adding more qualitative side to it, not just scrape the data. We don't want to just scrape the data. We want to understand specifically what's going on within all these MOOCs out there. And so Meina and I did some of that qualitative research as well as quantitative research, and we're going to be presenting those different studies to you. I have three books on MOOCs, and my colleagues Tom Reynolds on the right bottom there, he'll be joining us at 7 o'clock as one of the panelists because I went to grad school with him. But we've got Tom Reeves at the top there, my colleague from Georgia, Ka Zhang, who works with Meina at Wayne State, and Mimi Lee from University of Houston. The five of us have been together to do these three different books. And one of them got an award back at AACT in 2016, I think it was. So we've got billions of learners, and many haven't learned how to self-direct their own learning. So it's a real need today with all this free content, all this open access content, all these free MOOCs or even low-cost MOOCs, low-cost degrees to get people to self-direct their learning. What does that enable? What does that consist of? And how might instructors foster more self-directed learning and build the confidence of their learners and get them to interact in socially positive ways with their peers in those courses, to take initiative, to set their own goals. And so Meina and Dr. Mimi Lee and Anissa Sari, one of my doc students, the three of them decided to do a study back in 2016 to study all the research on MOOCs from a 3-year period to see what some of the topics are in the area of MOOCs and what journals people are publishing and things like that. So Meina is going to talk a bit about that. Meina.
Thank you, Dr. Bonk, for the great introduction about this study. So as Dr. Bonk mentioned, I collaborate with Anissa and Dr. Lee on this literature review. The purpose of this paper was to gain a deeper and more diverse understanding of the current MOOC phenomenon and identify the gaps in MOOC empirical study. So in this study, we had 4 research questions. First, what are the research methods that they used? The second is about their research topics or focuses in MOOC studies. And the third research question is related to the researchers' geographic location, and the fourth one is related to the countries that MOOCs been studied most. So in this systematic review, the top journals from this review results are from IRODL, Computers and Education, and BGET, which are most of them are the top journals in our field. Next slide, please. So regarding the research focuses and research methods for the research question 1 and 2, as you can see in this table, the MOOC empirical studies primarily focus on the student's perspective, and also they primarily use a quantitative or mixed methods. However, there are few studies focusing on instructor's perspective, especially using quantitative method. Regarding the research focus, a majority of the MOOC studies, they focus on the learner engagement, motivation, retention, and completion rate, etc. So for the research question 3, the location of the researchers, as you can see from this figure, a majority of the researchers are from the developing countries, especially in the North America area or European countries.
From the developed world, in effect. But there's some scattering from Mexico and other countries out there. So what happened is after that, I edited a special issue of ETR&D, Educational Technology Research and Development, and Meina submitted a proposal to expand that first study to look across all MOOC studies for the first decade, from 2009 to 2019. And so the same 3 worked together on a follow-up study that was published in ETR&D in 2020. So basically, we started with the oldest study we're showing you. Now we're showing one, just a follow-up is somewhere, it's a 1.5 years old. It's not that old. So we'll show a few data points from the follow-up study.
Thank you, Dr. Bonk. So for this study, this is an expansion of the first study, not only because it's the time expansion, it's also because we also compare the years between 2009 and 2016, and also 2017 to 2019. But here I only included the general data from this paper. As you can see, these are the top journals that we reviewed from this study. IRODL's Computers and Education still are the top journals from this review. And the majority of the study, they use a quantitative method, as it resonates with our prior study as well.
And when we compare countries, Chinese studies were more quantitative focused and UK were more qualitatively focused. US was kind of a mix between. So there's additional slides we're not going to have time to show you, but that kind of compared the two, as you said, 2017 to 2019 and the earlier studies. There's been a shift in the areas of MOOCs to be more qualitative in nature over time.
Yes. So for the data collection methods, of that survey, and also the platform data that in the MOOC system. Some of the interview, but observation or focus group interviews less used. Next, please.
And we lost you a little bit at the beginning there because your internet went out a little bit. So just you want to repeat the first point that you made?
Sorry, my internet didn't work very well. It happened when I had a meeting with Dr. Bonk before. So, so the data collection method, majority of them are from, they collect data from survey or the platform data generated in the MOOC system. However, few of them use the observation or focus group interviews for these MOOC empirical studies. For the data analysis, so obviously, if they use quantitative data, for example, survey or platform data, they primarily use descriptive statistics or inferential statistics. For the qualitative data analysis, they use a content analysis and a thematic analysis more. Next, please. So, go ahead.
So this is the third study that we'll come to. And this, so what happened is Online Learning Journal selected certain best papers from AERA. So we had a paper at AERA in 2018, which really led to Meina's dossier 2, her dossier 2 study. And that we were fortunate to get selected because they got published in December. So the conference was in April or something, and this got published in December. So we had 2 years in a row where we were published in Online Learning Journal, which is open access. And so this first study, we surveyed instructors and looked at, I think Meina will explain, we looked at their courses and interviewed them and so forth. She'll explain it was a mixed method kind of a study in here. Actually, I'm going to talk a little bit. So, instructors, as Meina pointed out earlier, were understudied. George Veletsianos' article pointed out that instructors were not being studied in terms of MOOC research. A few studies that looked at instructional design from the instructor's perspective. And we all know that instructional design as IST majors is critical to the world. IST is #1 at IU in the world. So someone should do a study on this. So the purpose of this study is to look to provide some suggestions for MOOC instructors about the design of their courses, for instructional designers about what kinds of components they might include and what challenges they might face when they offer a MOOC or a MOOC-like course. There are derivatives from MOOCs too. So what are the challenges and considerations? So what are the considerations of instructors when designing MOOCs? What are the challenges that they perceive? And how do they overcome those challenges, or how do they try to overcome those challenges or address the challenges? Meina will then talk about the mixed method study.
Thank you, Dr. Bonk. So to answer the 3 research questions, we used the mixed method design following Creswell and Clark's book. And then first we collected the quantitative data and conducted quantitative data analysis. After that, we collected qualitative data and conducted qualitative data analysis, and then integrated both data together. So for the data collection, we use a survey, interview, and MOOC course review. For the participants, we sent out survey to more than 1,400 participants, and we get around a 10% response rate. And then we interviewed 12 MOOC instructors in this study.
So when we first did the study, we had only 1,400 instructors in the database. Now we have 3,000 instructors in the database. So we've been doing over a dozen studies, I think, from the database that Meina collected.
Yeah, so for the interview, we selected 12 MOOC instructors. They are from diverse countries like the US, UK, or China, etc. And they have different subject areas. So some of them are in educational field, some of them are in math or psychology. Their courses were provided in different platforms. They are primarily from the main MOOC platform like Coursera, FutureLearn, and edX. So for the data analysis, for each research question, we have at least 2 data sources. For the qualitative data, we use the content analysis. For the quantitative data, we primarily use the descriptive statistics. So regarding the research context, the number of MOOCs the instructor has designed, as you can see in this figure, they had limited MOOC design experiences. A majority of them had only designed 1 courses.
So in fact, they're not experts at doing MOOCs. And so oftentimes what happens is the university twists people's arms into doing a MOOC, kind of like my arm was twisted too. Meina?
Yeah, so the number of learners enrolled in the MOOCs, a majority of them, like 38%, are less than 5,000.
So while we hear about hundreds of thousands of people, many of the MOOCs are much, much lower than that. And early on, they averaged about 40,000 in a MOOC, and later studies shows way under 10,000, or like more close to 5,000 average. Meina?
Yes. So for research question 1 regarding their design considerations, as you can see, the following 4 items are the primary design consideration. First is the learning objectives. Following that is assessment and the time for designing MOOCs, and also how to engage learners. As you can see in this figure is from the survey results. A majority of them are considered objectives of course and the time for design MOOCs. However, few of them consider the software resources or tools for communication, etc.
Or the learning theories. Too bad. Oh, no, not the learning theories. Yeah.
And so one instructor from the US mentioned how he engaged learners in his course. So each week he would write a message that would be the new welcome page for the week. Or he also did asking student questions during the instructional videos.
I will say the interviews are much more telling than the survey, and we'll have lots of interview quotes coming up. It's fun doing these interviews with Meina. And she and I have done some with Duolingo and the Nepal kids. The interviews are just so eye-opening all the time.
Yeah, so regarding the challenges for designing MOOCs, one of the primary challenges is to how to assess learners with a large number of learners in the MOOC courses. The second is how to engage learners in the MOOC courses. And the last one is more related to logistics, the time limitation of designing the MOOC courses. So this is a survey result. As you can see, among the 143 respondents, 91 choose that assessment is more challenging. However, technology support or strategy to encourage student team collaboration are not a primary challenge for their designing MOOC courses. For example, one instructor mentioned the time limitation. He said, I didn't get a course release when I was doing, and it was a side project at the same time as my regular load. And for the research question 3, how do instructors address these challenges? Most of them explore other MOOC examples and seek help from the platform or their colleagues in the institution. This is a survey result. For example, MOOC instructor browse other MOOCs for ideas, examples, and benchmarks. However, few of them read news, review MOOCs, or attend conferences or other professional events on MOOCs. One MOOC instructor in the US mentioned how he learned MOOC design from other courses. He said, when I started making the MOOC, I could see MOOCs that other people had made.
And this is a common finding. That in fact, people browse MOOCs. They browse. They don't go to conferences or get specific training. They browse other people's MOOCs. They're modeling, or they talk to other people and so forth. You kind of faded out, but we heard what you had to say that time, Meina.
Yeah, so as you can see from this study, we found that time limitation of creating MOOCs were the primary logistic considerations and also the challenges. The primary pedagogic factors, so they consider pedagogic part as well in their design consideration, and also pedagogic factors are also the primary challenges. For example, how to assess students' learning, how to engage students' learning in the MOOC courses.
Not too surprising. And notice Hugh again, the one who studied the top 10 MOOCs. His name is Timothy Hugh from the University of Hong Kong. And he sent his assistant, Ying, to study at IU, and she was on our team for a while. The other ones, Watson and Watson, that's Bill and Sunny Watson at Purdue. These are all IU alums, surprisingly. So there's a lot of IU alums in this research. I'm going to stop because we're at the end of study number 3. And we have this as 2 parts. So before I open up into study number 4, let's, instead of doing all questions at the end, Christian, again, we have the Jamboard, and may I have a question in the Jamboard and see if anyone has a question for us?
I think Jane has a question about how were the journals selected. I think it's about the study 1. How we did that for that category, we use the database. So with MOOCs at it appears some journals and or other journals we think that publish MOOC studies a lot, but if they were not included in scopes, we also individually search from the journal articles. So primarily we use the scope database to search.
Scopus database.
Scopes.
Right.
So we didn't at the beginning didn't specifically consider impact of the journal.
So what
I will
and
address this question.
you're fading out again, man. So what basically we did there, we did Scopus, plus we added certain journals. So what were the journals that maybe were not Scopus, but were publishing a lot in MOOCs? And that's how we decided on that. It was a combination approach, in effect. Do you have other questions up here? Or comments? Any comments before we go on to study 4?
There are a few questions that are happening in the Jamboard. They're populating now.
Okay,
great.
So one that kind of actually came out of somebody's just upvoted, Kim just upvoted one of the questions. But the first one that came up in me and Katie's conversation was, how do MOOCs get or stay updated with relevant content?
I want to answer the first question. Does Peloton working out? So yesterday, Meina was telling me how she was working out. Does that working out, is that a MOOC? If you're working out with other people. So is it a course? So massive open online course. Is there a course or are you learning content? If you're not learning content, or if you're not interacting about content, then it's not a MOOC. Then it's a social experience. It's an athletic experience, but it's not a massive open online course. See, everything is getting dumped as MOOCs. And if you go to Beijing, they have the MOOCs Times building, and they think that all online learning is a MOOC. So the MOOC's gotten overplayed a bit. And so working on a Peloton would not be a MOOC. However, if you're working on the Peloton, the people are trying to do, they work on the exercise machine and they study at the same time, and they're learning with thousands of people around the world at the same time, that would be a MOOC, right? So it depends on the context. The second question, Christian, you're asking is, how do MOOCs get updated? And what is considered successful for a MOOC, enrollments or completion dates or scores and so forth? How do MOOCs get updated? Well, they have budgetary amounts that they put in at MIT or at Stanford to every 3 years or 5 years look at those and refine them. But the MOOC phenomenon is so new that there's a lot of upfront costs that have been spent, and a lot of these places didn't think about the afterwards, the maintainability, the sustainability, the scalability, all these other issues that come into play. I am not an expert on, although I'm an accountant, on the financial side and what people are spending to update. We've not studied it. So Meina, have you studied that at all in your readings about how people maintain their MOOCs?
Not actually, but I heard that so for some MOOC courses, if they are supported by the university may provide the online master program or certificate program. So the kind of students have to pay money for the online master or certificate program in the MOOC courses, and then they have special staff or instructional designer who keep updating these courses. But for some MOOC courses, maybe only offered by individual professors, or so it's, for that part, it's difficult to get that updated consequently.
Right. So Meina, the second question, how is success defined? Is it completion rate? Is it test scores? Is it the enrollments? What do you think people would define as success?
I think this is a great question, and this is a question get asked a lot in the MOOC field. Difficult to define success as enrollment or completion rate, because some of the, for me, for example, for many learners, they may want to go to MOOC courses to just learn some specific topic. They don't necessarily have to complete the entire MOOC courses. They want to learn this unit. As long as sometimes it could be defined by the specific learner's purpose. If this learner want to learn this and they learn that, that's successful. But I don't know how to, as an organization, how to evaluate the successful. Yeah, but
I would say one metric would be the increase of enrollments over time. So look at, either sustained enrollments or increase in enrollments over time. You could also look at the smiley face at the end of these courses where they're doing some survey research among the people who have taken, maybe sampling of the people who have taken the MOOC. That's another indicator. You could look at the likes, the social media likes and sharings, how many people shared the MOOC experience with other people out there. And then you can actually look at whether they got a job. And some people have looked at that, whether that MOOC experience led to a credential or a job experience, a new job. But that takes a lot of homework. It takes a lot of data analysis to find out where people are getting a job and if they're getting a job. So success is kind of a nebulous thing, which then the easy thing is to look at completion. That's just the easy hanging fruit data. Did they complete it or not? And that's what people focus on because it's the easiest thing to get. But it's not necessarily, as Meina says, some people are only there to get 20% of the course, just like going to a library, getting a library book and reading 20% and turning the library book back in. That's success because you read what you wanted to read from that library book. That is also success in a MOOC because you got what you wanted out of that MOOC. So MOOCs are library books. That's the best way to describe a MOOC. It's a library book. But if but it's a library book that has an option. If you read the book, you could get a credential. Or if you read enough of these library books, you can get a credential, right? And maybe the same is true of going to the library. If you read enough library books, you get a gold stars. I remember going to second grade, I got 115 gold stars after my first grade teacher said I couldn't read at all. I had to prove my first grade teacher wrong, So
just because you didn't return the library books that you got the gold stars? No.
Let's just say the library I went to every day right after school across from my school is now a funeral parlor. Unfortunately.
Learning about life.
Yeah, learning about life and death. So what's the overlap between MOOC learners and university learners? We'll have to make these two. So Meina, you want to address either one of these questions?
I think it's kind of, they do have overlaps because some universities use the MOOCs to attract students to enroll in their program. For example, some students may enroll in these MOOC courses and then next they apply to their university. So, or some university even use the MOOC courses like kind of flipped classroom. So they ask students to review some online courses, MOOC courses, and then they have face-to-face courses to discuss some content or some activities. And also, as far as I know, there are many college students, they heard about MOOC courses. They use some MOOC courses as supplementary materials for themselves.
MOOCs could be a lost leader to attract people. They hear Dr. Bonk's doing this MOOC about IST, or the Crest toothpaste MOOC, because IU is known for Crest toothpaste. You have a 1-credit course at IU. They could turn that into a MOOC, and they could attract people into science at IU. So it could be that. It could be, as Meina says, you could flip the classroom and teach a traditional class and flip your class using MOOC content. I could have Harvard professors have all these videos from Harvard professors, and then I can focus on other things within my class. A third way you could do is I have optional assignments where people can take a MOOC and eliminate an assignment like the final or midterms if they finish the MOOC. So in effect, they're taking that MOOC plus my course. They're taking 2 courses and only getting credit for 1, but they're doing twice as much work, sort of. And then another thing is many students are getting ready to go to law school, getting ready to go from medical school, getting ready to go to something else. And so they might take a MOOC like anatomy because they have forgotten about anatomy because it's been too long before they go to medical school. So oftentimes people will what's called bone up. They're trying to relearn their calculus or their statistics before they go to grad school in educational psychology. It's in a statistics program. So, they had statistics a long time ago as a college sophomore, and they don't remember it. So there's overlap between MOOCs and formal education. A lot of overlap, actually. And there's all sorts of ways we probably didn't thought about that university life or higher education could benefit from MOOCs. Instead of always saying, MOOCs can help high school students get advanced placement courses. And there are some people repackaging MOOCs to take over like the first year of college study or your community college experience. So to have the first 2 years of college or first 1 year be available from MOOCs, and then in effect get low cost college for a year or 2 years, and then go to junior year and senior year. So there's a definite, Obama wanted the digital skills library using MOOC content and other things. That didn't get fully implemented, but it's coming. That kind of thing is coming. You already hear about free college all the time. Free college, free community college. They're going to use MOOC stuff, believe me. So advanced placement for high school kids, English, chemistry, statistics, all that from MIT is available. It's called Highlights for High School. So yeah. The other question, I'm just curious about how you both got interested in MOOCs. Was it to appease the university? And will MOOCs challenge the traditional education? MOOCs, people worry that MOOCs will be a challenge. So it was MOOCs overpromised and underdelivered, but they still are changing the world. MOOCs are changing a lot of things, as you see on the data. So they're challenging, but many things are challenging traditional education. Many things are. COVID is. I mean, seriously. And then the visa issues that we have are challenging traditional higher education. There are many things that are challenging us. People living longer is challenging. But how do we get interested in MOOCs? So Meina, you want to tell how? That's a good. That's a question we haven't been asked before. So I'll let Meina answer it first.
Oh, because I benefited from MOOC courses. So before I came to the US, I even enrolled in some courses first to practice English. Second is to learn some content that I was interested in. And I think this is beneficial for any people who want to learn.
And so for me, I had a book come out in 2009 called The World is Open. And I have had many books before that or things. And so when MOOCs hit the scene in 2008, I was teaching this class and people are sending me their emails while teaching this class in room 12101. I was getting these emails from my students saying, yeah, there's the book saying, these guys, David Wiley is offering certificates in his class and people finish it. BYU isn't endorsing it, but he's just giving them a certificate. And then these guys in Canada, they're doing this thing called a MOOC. They're having free class. They have 18 people enrolled and got 2,000 taking this class. 2,000 people or less are enrolled and paying, and they have 2,000 people freebies just for nothing, just hanging on there. So they said, you wrote the book as The World is Open. You should be doing MOOCs, Dr. Bonk. So that's what happened. People were telling me, you've done this stuff. You should, there's and administrators at IU, the same thing. They're saying, hey, this is for you, So in effect, and for Meina, she experienced it. For me, it was something, my goal is to create, find, promote, highlight educational options for people that are free and open or low cost, that enables more people to get access to education. And so whether I was studying informal learning, extreme learning, or OER, open education resources, or online or blended, all that stuff led to this, right? So I should probably go to part 2 in here. And we'll see if I can find part 2. I think I found it. That's part 1. I think this is part 2. We'll see. It is. Okay, so for a change, I guessed right. I'm so used to guessing wrong. So study 4, we have 8 studies, remember, and we'll be taking a break at 7:45 no matter what. Study 4, MOOCs instructional design to facilitate participants' self-directed learning. So we'll get instructional design variables, and now we move to the second phase. So the first phase led to dossier 1. PhD students all have, or dossier 2, PhD students all have to have, like, in effect, a master's research kind of project before they can dissertate. So study 3 enabled Meina to dissertate, in effect, because she passed her dossier 2. And so we moved into, this was her dissertation. She said, I'm really interested in self-directed learning, self-regulated learning. I don't know which one I should study, Dr. Bonk. Should I study self-directed or self-regulated? I said, Meina, you need to go read the definitions of what's out there. She said, well, what is self-regulated learning and how is it different from self-directed learning? I said, well, Meina, if you look at the literature, a lot of people are interested in self-regulated learning, but it's more K-12 in nature. It's more focused on the cognitive skills that one has, and brings to bear in solving problems. But self-directed learning is broader in nature. It has to do with self-managing their environment, monitoring their environment, and the motivation that leads to their success. So Randy Garrison, an old friend of mine from the University of Calgary, he's kind of a historian of distance learning. He has this model on the different dimensions of self-directed learning. And Shishi and I have used this model for her study of Duolingo. And we have 2 papers in review now, one on self-monitoring, one on self-management, I think, or motivation. So they're in review. Hopefully, Shishi, one of them, at least one gets accepted. Maybe both this year, right? And then, so Meina and I published a couple of things from here. There's a Journal of Self-Directed Learning, or International Journal of Self-Directed Learning. There's a Journal of Learning for Development, which is free, which Sanjaya Mishra is the first editor of, who was our guest 3 weeks back. And so, you know, we read the literature. I told Meina, go read the literature. And so self-directedness of a learner varies within these environments, and we have to provide the cues that help them succeed. Learners need those skills to be able to have success in learning environments that are fuzzy and complex, that are difficult to complete, like a MOOC. And so there's not a lot of self-directed, there's not a lot of feedback from an instructor. So people might rely more on self-directed learning skills. And I got into grad school by taking correspondence and TV courses that were very self-directed in nature, with intermittent feedback from instructors. So instructional design can influence our success in online or blended environments or in MOOCs. And what's lacking is research on the instructor side. What do they perceive about the self-directed learning skills of their students? There's a need for research that understands that. So this research, the purpose is to inform, again, instructors, instructional designers, educators, program managers, those people making decisions about MOOCs, about what can help their learners. And in fact, Sanjaya Mishra, I think, talked about MOOC on MOOC, teaching people about MOOCs and how to deliver MOOCs. They actually have a course from the Commonwealth of Learning called MOOC on MOOC. So how do MOOC instructors perceive the self-directed learning skills? How do they facilitate their self-directed learning skills? How do they perceive their facilitation skills to be? And how do instructors design and deliver the MOOCs? How is the technology used to support, and what technology features can improve facilitation of the MOOC participants to be more self-directed in nature? So again, Meina is going to walk us through the design of the study and some of the results, and I'll come back to you with 20 ways you can implement, so 20 things that people can do to increase self-directedness. And we have an article in review in Tech Trends about that. I think maybe it's 15 ways, right, Meina? We cut, some of them are repeated, but it's 15 main ways. Go ahead, Meina.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Bonk, for the introduction of the background of this study. So as the prior study, we use the explanatory sequential mixed method design. First, we conducted a pilot interview with 4 instructors to revise the interview questions, and then we also conducted a pilot survey with 48 instructors to revise and create the survey instrument. And then we surveyed 198 MOOC instructors and reviewed 22 MOOC courses, and interviewed 22 MOOC instructors. And so this is the data collection methods survey, as we mentioned, and we got, it's the same as the last study, we got around 10% response rate. And for the interview, we used the homogeneous purposeful sampling and also the maximal variation sampling to select the 22 interviewees. So these are the detailed information about 22 interviewees. They are primarily from the US, UK, Australia, France, etc. And their courses are provided in different platforms like edX, Coursera, and also they have diverse online or blended course design experiences, or whether some of the courses they have the TA, some of them they don't, or they are self-paced.
So on the left, on the right there, it says I with T, means instructor with a teaching assistant, which I had in my MOOCs. Those that say I without T, they're very hard to do. You don't have any help. You're by yourself, and you call Christian real fast. Can you help me, Christian? So yeah, so data analysis, Meina.
Yes, to increase the trustworthiness of the study for each research question, we use at least 2 data sources, and these are data analysis methods that we.
And so Meina's lost some connection, I think, for a second there. Meina, you back?
Am I back?
Yes. Okay, good.
Okay, sorry. So the research context for these among these MOOC instructors that we surveyed, a majority of them are from social science, medicine, and health. A few of them from math or engineering. So for research question 1, so we examined what's their perceptions about self-directed learning. As you can see in this figure, majority of them think self-directed learning is a set of skills that can be educated or attributes that could be changed.
So if you think about one slide in this whole talk that we're going to have, that's maybe the most important slide, it might be this one of all one, because this offers hope. This is optimism. It's like Vygotsky saying, you know, you need resources to get to think with. Well, the same, you know, if we can have open educational resources, we have opportunities to engage people in new ways. Same, if learners can be taught these skills, then there's billions of people that can benefit. What are the skills that can be taught and how can we teach them? You know, there's real hope there.
Yeah, so one of the instructor, Emma, mentioned how her understanding about self-directed learning is more related to self-management and motivation. As she said, I think about students managing their time, managing the coursework on their own, and how it fits into their schedules and their lives. So for research question 2 about their perceptions of facilitating the student self-directed learning, most of them think instructors can intentionally create learning environment to help students have direct learning skills and abilities. I actually emphasized the importance of both instructors' facilitation and student self-directed learning skills. She said, the participant has a lot of flexibility on their own approach, how they approach the content. We as instructors also have things like assignments. So it's kind of from both sides, both instructor facilitation and student self-directed. So research question 1 is one of the research questions about what are the specific strategies that instructors use to facilitate student self-directed learning. So the first table is related to the motivation, how they motivated learners. So the data analysis results show that they include both interim motivation and task motivation. Interim motivation means that how they motivate students at the beginning of the MOOC courses. So some MOOC instructors help students identify the needs and their learning goals. And for the task motivation, MOOC instructors use like interactive instructions, learning materials, like immediate feedback or learning community to motivate learners. So this is one example how the MOOC instructor create learning community for the students. So he, at the beginning of the course, he asked students to grading with each other through this interactive map. And also he created a social media page for students to socialize with each other. The second primary part is about self-monitoring. How did they help students self-monitoring? So this could be categorized into internal feedback and external feedback. For internal feedback, it is related to cognition and metacognition. MOOC instructors provided quizzes for self-assessment and tutorial on technology use, etc. for cognitive learning. For metacognitive learning, metacognitive learning, MOOC instructors encourage students to reflect and think critically by providing reflection questions or building learning community. And also external feedback also helps. So this is an example how they use self-assessment in the course to help students self-monitor their learning.
I noticed that someone might have come in here just now who's come for the panel at 7 o'clock. So if you came in for the panel, that's going to be in about a half hour from now. We're ending a study looking at self-directed learning for Meina Zhu and myself. You're welcome to stay, and by all means, please. But we'll get to Okwa Lee and the others in about a half hour. So research question number 3, Meina.
Yeah. So next, please. Dr. Bonk. So another strategy they use in the MOOC courses, they use progress indicators to show learners their learning progress through the course. And also they use peer assessments a lot in the MOOC courses because it's difficult for MOOC instructor to give assessment to each learners. And the last important element is self-management. This is related to how they help students manage their time and resources and support. So they provide time frame, progress indicator, as you mentioned, you see before, and short learning units. To help them manage the learning resources, they provide more flexible learning resources and peer assessment, etc. So this example of the time estimates of this course.
Was this from Lori Santos's MOOC?
Pardon, what's your question?
Lori Santos at Yale has that well-being MOOC or happiness. Is this from her MOOC or?
Actually, the other courses from the Coursera, they have almost the same layout structure. Okay. Yeah. So the sub question of research question 3 was technology use to help students after learning. As you can see, they use the synchronous communication technology, asynchronous technology, multimedia, and feedback technology. For synchronous, sometimes they use Google Hangout or YouTube to have live sessions to address student questions or have live conversations, etc. Asynchronous communication technology, they primarily use discussion forum in MOOC courses, and some of them use blog or Slackboard or Flickr for communication. And as you this study we found majority of instructors self-directed learning skills or attributes that could be changed, and also MOOC instructors can play a role in their self-directed learning ability development. The specific strategies primarily focus on the motivation, self-monitoring, and self-management, and technology plays an important role to facilitate student self-directed learning. Regarding the technology expectation from the interview, we found that MOOC instructors expect to have more adaptive learning systems and artificial intelligence system and learning analytics to support students self-directed learning because of the large number of learners.
This is a kind of a recap slide. Yes, we heard earlier that instructors think it can be changed. So here are the strategies that can come into play.
So these are the implications for MOOC instructor designers. First, it's important to build learning community to help students self-directed learning. And second, it's great to inspire student intrinsic motivation at the beginning and through the course, and also provide more personalized learning experience. For MOOC providers, it's also similar. Yeah. Dr. Bonk will talk about.
Yeah, so there are a lot of tips or strategies. They're listed right here to get people to be more self-directed learner, where there are intermittent quizzes along the way or progress bars or having flexible timelines. These are all, these 10 things we had on a poster at AERA conference in Toronto. And this is the one slide everyone looked at. So I told Meina, we need to write this up as a Tech Trends article. So we did. We expand these 10. We actually 10 to 20, we have settled on 15, I think, in that article. It's now under review. And so I'm going to walk you through these again in here. So helping students set their goals. Here's an example. I have asked at the first page of the course why they're taking the course. So what is your goals? Getting them to be explicit about the goals that they have. In terms of building community, building community around a discussion board or having a global picture of where people are coming from, and pointing out where people can share and how people can get information and give information is all part of community building, if you will. And so this is just one quote that talks about what one instructor did to create a community within his course. And then numbers 3 and 4 get at the instructor or the system or their peers providing feedback. Some use peer graded essays, for instance, that might be utilized in the course. Some use system computer generated feedback, but offering feedback and then offering opportunities and chances to reflect on how well you're doing in the course along the way, to have them self-assess, have them take a quiz at the end of a module or at the beginning of the module and see how they're doing. And then having a visual display of how well they're progressing with a progress bar, as we had up earlier in there, It's a way for students to say, oh yeah, I'm succeeding, I'm getting through this. I've got my peer support within the course. I'm doing okay on the quizzes. All this can build self-efficacy, can build self-confidence. And then providing some reflection questions along the way at key moments in time so students can kind of get a sense of how well they're doing in comparison to the expectations or the norms within the course, to pause every once in a while in a video to reflect on the learning that took place so far. And then designing the short units so that people don't get overwhelmed with 1 hour or 2 hours to go. Give them 6-minute chunks or 10-minute chunks or 3-minute chunks so that people can learn in small increments and then move along within that particular course. And providing those timelines that are deadlines, but are flexible deadlines that people can adjust or shift the deadlines if you don't exactly make it completed when you said you would. And then highlight how long it might take someone. This video will take you 4 minutes to watch. This video will take you 6 minutes. The quiz will take you 2 minutes. So get a sense as you progress in that course, what are the components you're going to have to engage in, and how long will those different components take you to complete? And then making different options available so that you can do option A and B or C and D, so that if you've already read the option A materials, you can go to option B. Some people who take a MOOC, you might have read, Christian might have read some of this before, or he might have taken that MOOC and never completed, so he's come back. So giving them the option to learn new stuff. And then offering some structures. Christian likes doing concept maps, as you see in the discussion forums. The mind maps using MindDomo or Glyphy or Mind whatever tools that he has there. The same is true of MOOCs. You need some MindMeister, right? So you need some visual depiction, some cues out there for your progress and for the structure of the course. When are you going to engage in the tests and the different components? How far along in the semester? What are the titles of each module going to be? And so this is a course on infectious diseases from the World Health Organization, or WHO, Open WHO. And again, providing those structures for the modules, those essential materials, but not too much as to be redundant and overwhelming for the learners. And then another key thing is to give them a certificate upon completion, some kind of indicator or tangible, something tangible in nature that shows that they finished that course, or that at least they took the course. So this is a science of well-being, which Kim took. It got a 4.9 out of 5 ratings. It's got 8,000 ratings, and millions of people have taken this course. So here, just seeing that other people took it, reading what they said about it, having that available can also be helpful for motivation, to know what the stumbling blocks are, what the challenges others face, to know what the weekly overview is going to be like, and what units are going to come up. What one's going to be expected to learn in week 1, week 2, week 3, and so forth. Going to the pre-recorded lectures and captions, and maybe if you're hearing impaired, you read the transcripts, right? So those are available for you if you have different disabilities, for instance, or if you don't know English, you might be able to learn it in a different language, for instance. And so now also look at the highlights within the transcripts that maybe the instructor has provided for you to help you be guided in the learning process. See what the instructor feels is the pinnacle part of that unit or the course, and then focus on those kinds of things potentially. Or the instructor might point out the difficult part of the unit that might be coming up, or put a self-check or a quick check in, embedding those within the course so that you can assess again, and it also increases engagement and attention. Providing self-selection options. Again, as I said, there's an option to watch all the videos in our course, read all the materials, submit all the assignments, or do only some of the things because you know it already. You can cut corners in some cases and not be bored to tears because Jen's already watched some of that. She knows some of that already. So the visuals also can show you what you completed, so you get a sense of satisfaction. And you're not overwhelmed with the course because you know you completed the majority of the content in there. And you can see your progress within the course for this particular week. And then she also has what's called rewirements, where people are actually utilizing the skills. They're using the content to do something, whether it's writing a gratitude letter, saying, thank you, Christian, for helping me, and Shishi, thank you for helping me in this course, or some other random acts of kindness, something where they're using the content in the Science of Wellbeing course to become more healthy. You see, they have a daily calendar or a notepad. And Kim says there's now a mobile app for that course where they can try out some of the things and record it in the app so they can get some feedback that way. And then they have people like Kim come back to the course. Some like my friend Chuck Severance has people come back to his course on Python programming to teach other people, to be his mentor. So he's not the only teacher. And so they might get a title of community mentor, a title of learning facilitator, whatever the title is, something they can put on their resume and they get credit for, and they feel good about it. And then also, in some cases, we know that there's going to be peer graded assignments. That's a way to motivate. It's a way to get people to self-direct because they know their work is going to be graded at the end. So that's the first 4 studies, and we're at, we got 7 minutes left. And but I'll just mention 2 of the studies that you can go back to. They're in your packet for readings. Meina's picture's in here, you see, and 4 other IST students. We studied personalization of MOOCs and cultural sensitivity. One got published in IRR ODL, which is a top journal, and it's open access, it's SSCI. The other one got published in a Turkish journal of TJTD, Turkish Journal of Distance Education, which is open access, not as high quality of a journal. So again, people came from education and medicine, and they were very involved in, we asked them, how involved were you in designing? Well, they're more involved in designing than actual delivery, as you can see here, and how we asked them about meeting individual needs and what they did, peer feedback, system feedback, moderator feedback, not so much instructor feedback you see in here. And we asked about their interest in helping personalize the MOOC, and we asked what kinds of systems that they use to personalize. Most used computer grading. Most did not use AI in terms of consultative services, AI in terms of embedded agents to offer advice or alerting about missing assignments, or about helping the instructor know who's not logging in. Those things were not being used. So AI is not prevalent except in the exam part of it. The other study that I mentioned was cultural sensitivity. We had the same people in the second study. You see a double image here. So Meina took over in this project near the end and helped us get it published. So I want to really thank her for all her hard work, and it got out in the Turkish Online Journal of Distance Education. And in here, we asked about how much they address cultural sensitivity. We asked about whether they teach online or blended courses. And we asked about their instructional practices and what kind of variety they include within the courses. Do they have discussion forums? Do they have embedded videos? Do they have study groups? Do they have virtual office hours? Do they have announcements so that you can see what kinds of things they had in the course? And then we asked about, so these are the most prevalent items, optional readings, certificates and badges. And then the other ones weren't so prominent within there. Not many people had portfolios or collaborative teams, for instance. And then we asked what methods they allow students to showcase their work, to showcase what they're doing, and they're not doing much of anything. We also asked about linguistic and cultural diversity within the MOOCs. And we asked do they offer transcripts and subtitling, and yes, they do, and simplifying language, and yes, they do. Slowing down their speech, Dr. Bonk. That's so there's different things that they do, and not using hand gestures, subtitling, and then the most important part of this paper is the tables 3 and I think tables 4. In these tables, they pointed out what they're doing in terms of course design, in terms of communication, in terms of technology accessibility. And here in this study, we not only well, we surveyed or interviewed all the people who wrote a chapter in my MOOCs and Open Ed book. So this is from experts out there. These are people who wrote chapters for my book and what they had to say in terms of addressing cultural diversity. And I may come back to this next week in class, some of the findings on all of this. Again, how did they address language differences? How did they develop a community? So avoiding religious and political issues, for instance, were among the things that were mentioned. And I had this up here last week. So again, if you go back to this article, take a look at tables 3 and 4, because they have a lot of advices, or we hopefully had a lot of advices in terms of setting up frequently asked questions, making transcripts available for your students, utilizing free textbooks where possible, utilizing open educational resources, creating material that is culturally sensitive and acceptable across cultures, looking at the target country's compliance and regulation rules that they might put in place. So those kinds of things. Study 7 is the new study that might come out tomorrow, March 1st. It's going to come out soon, within the next month or two, in the Online Learning Journal. Study 8, which we probably won't get to in full because we're going to run out of time here, is again looking at structural equation modeling, and I'll point to that at the end. So Meina is going to walk us through here and looking at what motivated individuals to enroll in MOOCs, what were the learning strategies that students used, and what were the design elements of the MOOCs that helped them become self-directed. So the first 6 studies were, well, studies 1 and 2 were just a what's going on. The next 4 studies were instructor point of view. This study gets finally to student point of view. So this is critical, the student point of view. It was so much fun interviewing these students with Meina a couple of summers ago, not this past, but the summer before, I think it was. And Meina, you want to give some of the highlights of this, because we're going to have to let everyone have a break.
Yeah, we only have 3 minutes left, so I will briefly introduce this study. So Dr. Bonk and I, we interviewed 15 students. This is kind of a follow-up study of my dissertation. So they are from diverse countries, like you can see they are from UK, Yemen, Turkey. Most of them, they are students, and some of them, they have their current job, and also they have retired people here. So this is the primary finding from this study, the coding themes. About motivation, we categorize into intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation of learners, and learning strategies relate to the task strategies, self-monitoring, and self-management. And also one of the important part is the instructional elements that can support students as direct learning from students' perspective. Previously study, we primarily talked about from instructor's perspective.
So I want to welcome Okwa Lee in here, who will be the focus on the panel in 15 minutes. We're just finishing. We're going to take a break in about 3 minutes, and so hang on, Okwa. We'll be right with you. And so we had quotes from different people. So Jacob, a retired management consultant, just said, in terms of intrinsic motivation, I get very interested in topics. I realize holes in my knowledge, and I just try and fill them in. So a lot of people learn just because they want to learn something, even though they retired. And like Okwa's doing as of today, she's going to retire. She's still going to want to take MOOCs and learn stuff, and all that. And so Meina, you want to take the next slide?
Yeah, so some of the learners have more extrinsic motivation. For example, this is the student who said some participants, so to acquire and improve my knowledge as a medical physicist, I consider my resume when selecting MOOCs. So how learning this MOOC can add as one item in their resume. Next, please. So second research question about the learning strategies. There are diverse strategies. First is the evaluation, for example, or quizzes or self-assessment. So as a progress bar with milestones with a small quiz that doesn't count for the evaluation, but they are good for you to check if I'm really learning. So this is using the self-quiz is one strategy. The second important strategy is note-taking. A lot of learners mentioned that they took notes when they learned from the courses. As Dan said, so whatever videos or whatever exercise that I was doing, I was always taking notes. To help their self-monitoring, they use different strategies such as quizzes we mentioned and progress. So when students mentioned there's a test after each week performing it, and I can see in which topic I have the biggest gaps and I got it well. For self-management, some of them they allocated the morning or time or afternoon time for writing, etc. So
they have mapped out their time, what they're going to do. They're taking notes. They're very planful. There's a lot of cognition involved. A lot of metacognition involved in these.
And also they kind of, as we mentioned before, they use the worksheets or set of questions after each module to help them evaluate their learning step by step. Another element is setting clear goals, like Dan mentioned some tips at the opening of the MOOC saying, hey guys, there's a MOOC that require you a certain amount of hours per week. So give students some expectations of the goals, what they should learn or how long they should learn. Another strategy that help them learning is the authentic examples. So Helen mentioned the authentic example resources and visuals that some instructors demonstrated in the courses help her with the learning in the MOOC courses. Another element is flexibility. As we mentioned, for the MOOC courses, the learners can learn at any time and any place. And also they can, if they miss one assignment, they can postpone the schedule. So one participant said, it helped me realize that I enjoy learning a lot more than I can just be a little more careful about it. I just find it a lot more enjoyable to learn with the flexibility.
I think we'll probably end with some of these, just a little point, small units, chunking the information in, using the discussion board or not, getting, this was problematic, the student not getting feedback right away and sending a question in. So that's it for study 7. Study 8 just gets at self-monitoring, motivation, self-management, again, doing structural equation modeling. Motivation positively affected self-monitoring. Motivation positively affected self-management. Self-monitoring positively affected self-management of MOOC students, and self-monitoring mediated the relationships thereof. So we just got we verified Garrison's model. And so, it has a lot of strength to it. So the study came out in ETR&D in 2020, and it's been cited, this one, because we verified an existing model. Even though it's not as interesting to me or Meina as our interview studies have been, this has gotten a lot more attention. It's gotten a lot more hits, and people are really focusing in on this for whatever reason. So what's the future? I don't know, but we've covered 8 studies in a little over an hour. And I hope that across these 8 studies, the 2 doing systematic reviews of the research, the 4 studies of MOOC instructors, and the 1 study of MOOC students, and then the structural equation. There's a lot there. And hopefully you got a few ideas of how to create more engaging, more interactive MOOCs where people succeed. And so that was really the goal of all that. I'm lucky to work with Meina and Anissa Sari and Ying and others on the various studies that I showed, or that we showed in here. But Meina's really, really worked hard, and I think we need to give her a real round of applause for all that she's worked so hard on this work. Meina, do you have a final comment on what we presented here and a takeaway for everyone?
So I want to mention that because Dr. Bonk is an amazing professor and advisor, so he helped me and through this process. I couldn't achieve this without his help. Thank you.
So we do maybe have time for one question. And so does anyone have a comment or a question? We can take a 10-minute break and come back. Anybody want to have something that didn't get answered? Or in the Jamboard that's not been answered? I haven't looked at the Jamboard lately. Oh, there's a lot in the Jamboard. So could a robot deliver Sure, robots will, and they already are teaching MOOCs. In fact, that's what Arizona State's doing in their 100 million learner project in their business school. They're going to have robots and AI along with instructors teach these MOOCs that enable 100 million people around the world to take a free MOOC and get maybe a certificate in business. So yes, yes, and yes. Will those courses, college courses, and how will they build stories for those in science? Just curious. Labs, they do offer labs in via MOOCs. I mean, it's a longer question. And I'm not an expert at labs, but there are lab experiences. Meina, do we study any labs did any of our?
We didn't specifically study the labs, but I noticed that they do have like virtual labs for some science courses. Right now, they have the kind of virtual or simulation. Students can do that online. And also for some computer science courses, because the lab session will primarily programming, so it doesn't influence that part. Thanks for the great question.
Yeah, we have more great questions in here, but I can't read them because it's small print. How were the journals selected? We asked that. Would C-email courses count as paper-based MOOCs similar to how correspondence courses? I guess I'll answer it a different way. The MOOCs that I took from the University of Wisconsin, or the correspondence courses from the University of Wisconsin when I met Okwa, I had taken these courses the year before I met her. Those would be called MOOCs today. Correspondence courses, TV courses, all that. We probably call it massive open online correspondence courses or massive open online television courses. But still the same premise. You know, people have been doing MOOC-like things through correspondence, TV, radio, film in the past. They're now online learning has expedited that. Online learning has enabled us to do it in ways we never imagined previously. Jennifer is asking here, not sure about MOOCs, but I read about online high schools having labs. Yes, they do. Physics, chemistry, go to PHET from the University of Colorado, PHET. Has anyone done research on effectiveness of the content learned in MOOCs and how they can help certain professionals in the workplace with their newfound certifications? So that's an area where things are moving towards, is going to adult learning, certificates, upskilling and reskilling, and PD in general for teachers, PD for accountants, whatever. That's where things are going. Has anyone done a study or follow-up? Well, maybe you should do that as your final assignment and do a meta-analysis of the research on professional development. Meina, do you know of a particular study on professional development from MOOCs?
So far, I didn't specifically focus on that area. I'm sure maybe there's some studies.
There's some study. There is stuff out there. I just don't have it to my tongue. I'm going to end this. Again, want to thank Meina for coming in here. We need to take a break, so I want to stop the recording. This is going to the